This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Winnipeg police are asking for the public's help finding 3 people suspected in a terrible assault. Just today, they released details of an attack that happened nearly 2 weeks ago. As the CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports, 2 people are already in custody.
It's a crime police are calling troubling. A 27-year-old assaulted and left in a dumpster by this Manitoba housing building in downtown Winnipeg last week.
This was a brutal assault on an Indigenous woman.
Police say it began the afternoon of December 9th. The woman arrived at a home here with another person police are still looking for. Sergeant Gary Mathis says over the course of about a day, she was attacked, bound, and put in a nearby dumpster.
I don't know of any way she could have freed herself without the assistance of somebody.
He says she may have been in there for about an hour in the cold before her screams were heard.
It's disturbing, and it's a complete disregard for any kind of human life as far as I'm concerned.
They're details that anger but don't surprise nearby resident Natalie Kleinschmidt, who says she often sees first responders here.
We hear of violence against women all of the time, of women being trafficked. Women are afraid of coming into this building.
Officers arrested a man and a woman in connection with the crime late last week. Police are still looking for Joey Michael Audie, a 35-year-old man wanted for attempted murder. 2 other people are also wanted for forcible confinement and robbery.
The investigation has significant video evidence.
Police say the victim is recovering from facial injuries and has since been released from hospital. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An unprecedented level of demand is forcing a Winnipeg holiday charity to turn people away. The Christmas Cheer Board says it's already handled a record number of applications and can't accept any more. CBC's Zubina Ahmed was there this afternoon.
Here at the Christmas Cheer Board, where the volunteers are packing and filling up the last batch of orders for the season. We have just come to know that today, for the first time in the 104-year history of the Christmas Cheer Board, they have to stop taking applications. We spoke to the executive director, Shauna Bell, who says that the rising cost of supplies, inflation, has led to this decision.
One thing we're seeing with everyone who's supporting folks by way of food is that there's such a demand out there. The increase in inflation and cost of living has created a perfect disaster for a lot of people and forcing them to make some very difficult decisions. People need food, and that's why they come to us. It's a difficult time of the year for everyone. So this overwhelming need has come up because there's such a shortness of funds and things cost so much more money.
The Cheer Board received a record of 20,500 applications for holiday hampers, which is about 2,000 more than last year's total, although they can't take any more applications for hampers. Bell says they will try their best to provide at least toys to other families in need. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is asking nurses to take extra help over the holidays. It says emergency departments at the Grace and St. Boniface hospitals have been seeing higher volumes of patients, leaving them stretched to the limit. CBC's Emily Brass has more.
Nurses across the board know that this profession is a calling.
Manitoba's health minister calls it a proactive approach. The WRHA sent an urgent memo this week to nurses begging them to work extra shifts over the holidays.
I recognize that frontline healthcare workers all deserve the opportunity to have some downtime and rest and be with their families and celebrate the holidays however they want to. It's also important to recognize that people still have slip and falls on their driveways. There are still car accidents. People get sick.
The memo obtained by CBC offers nurses a 15% premium for agreeing to work these additional shifts. It says, quote, "Your support is crucial in ensuring that we can provide quality patient care during these busier times." But the Manitoba Nurses Union says nurses have been working hard for years now with mandated overtime and are entitled to a break.
They're exhausted. You know, they've had absolutely no rest since COVID first reared its head, and there's no rest for them now because when you go to work, you never know that whether you're going to be allowed to go home or not, or whether you're going to be mandated to stay for a second shift. So I think that anyone that has a day off is taking it if they possibly can.
The union says hospitals are often short-staffed around the holidays, especially as respiratory illnesses are on the rise, including COVID. Jackson says the Canadian Nurses Association has been predicting the staffing shortage for decades, and governments failed to take enough action to prevent it. The health minister says they're working on it.
And it's going to take us time to start seeing the benefits of the investments our government has made already, of the relationships that we're repairing with healthcare workers.
Meanwhile, patients are encouraged to visit urgent care centers and walk-in clinics if possible to reduce the strain on emergency rooms. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
If you or your child ever eat food purchased in the United States, Manitoba Health suggests you pay attention to food recalls in both Canada and the U.S. This warning comes after blood tests showed a Manitoba child had elevated blood lead levels after eating applesauce that had been recalled in the United States. The recall was on several brands of cinnamon apple snack pouches, which were not sold in Canada. They were recalled in the U.S. due to elevated levels of lead. The province says the Manitoba child has not experienced negative symptoms linked to the lead exposure. Winnipeg City Council approved sweeping changes to housing rules last month in order to access millions of dollars in federal funding. Today, the city found out how much it's getting. And as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, it's less than hoped for.
The City of Winnipeg hopes you'll be seeing a lot more of this over the next few years.
We're going to use these investments to try to spark a renaissance of home building across this city, and especially building of affordable home units throughout Winnipeg.
The city is getting $122 million from Ottawa's Housing Accelerator Fund. That's expected to fast-track more than 3,000 homes over the next 3 years, including 900 affordable units, and eventually lead to 15,000 units over the next decade. The approved funding is $70 million less than what the city had applied for, but Mayor Scott Gillingham says the city can still reach its goals.
This $122 million, when put into play here in Winnipeg, will really result in multiple millions more that are going to be invested ultimately.
City Council approved sweeping zoning changes demanded by the federal government to get the funding. That included allowing up to 4 units per lot citywide. Those units can go in buildings up to 4 stories tall near frequent transit routes. The money will go towards several initiatives meant to increase housing construction. They include bylaw amendments, incentives for multifamily housing downtown, and infrastructure upgrades. The head of the Manitoba Home Builders Association says the changes are necessary.
To modernize our zoning bylaw, which hasn't been touched for quite a long time and is not in step with Winnipeg's planning documents.
But some changes, like allowing up to 4 units without the need for a public hearing, have drawn controversy. Aaron Moore is a politics professor at the University of Winnipeg.
I do worry about accepting the terms of the funding before actually going through the process of figuring out how you're going to implement it.
Any changes to the city's bylaw will require a hearing and a vote of council. That is expected to happen in 2025. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
One person was rushed to hospital this morning after a serious assault in Winnipeg's Elmwood neighborhood. Police say they were called to the intersection of Watt Street and Talbot Avenue just after 8 a.m. An adult is listed in unstable condition, but police haven't released any other details about the age or even the sex of the victim. A Winnipeg man who is under the care of the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba says many of his most valuable possessions are missing from his home. He's been fighting for access to his house for months. As the I-Team's Caroline Bargood explains, when he finally got to go inside, he was shocked by what he found.
This was the window that was broken. This is the first one I saw. And you can see that somebody really tried to get in there.
Paul Cameron Miller is desperate to go inside his house. It's been nearly a year since he lived here. Last December, the 65-year-old froze his feet and ended up in hospital for months. He was deemed incapable of looking after himself and placed under the care of the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba.
So there's the evidence of the broken glass So there had been definitely break-ins.
Miller's home has been broken into 4 times, but the public trustee hasn't allowed him to go inside to see what's been stolen.
I haven't experienced violence like this to my home. You know, in the time that I was here, not such a thing would have ever happened.
On this day, Miller and his friends waited for an hour for the trustee to let them in. But then his case manager told them that wasn't going to happen.
Hi, Chris, sorry to bother. Sounds like we'll have to postpone the meeting on Monday, so I know Janine wasn't there this afternoon.
Chris Olafson has been advocating for Miller to get out from under guardianship. Since being placed under the care of the public trustee, Miller says he hasn't received a penny of his own money. His house is nearly in foreclosure, and he has no idea what happened to some of his belongings. Miller has been living with Olafson since August, and after months of asking for access to his house, the pair were allowed in last week.
It was just one of these things where it was kind of sitting back and going, okay, there is some serious stuff missing here.
Miller says his home was trashed and it was hard to see what was there, but he believes his mother's ashes are missing.
I did not see the urn there at all. And if it was, it may have been one of the things that was shattered on the floor. Who knows?
While the home was very cluttered before Miller was hospitalized, Olafson is concerned about the damage from the break-ins. She says valuable artwork was destroyed and several items appear to have gone missing.
It was devastating just to see that kind of destruction and to see, like, you know, the Picasso print lying on the floor with a big boot mark on it, and knowing that like there was all these pictures that were on the wall that were just thrown onto the ground.
Miller and Olafson say will take a few more visits to the house to figure out what they can sell in hopes of getting the mortgage paid up to date to prevent foreclosure. Miller will be reassessed by the chief psychiatrist in January. Until then, he says he plans to keep fighting to prove he's capable of looking after himself so he can get out from being under guardianship. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauter's back with us tonight. Yes. We're going to talk a little bit about snow depth.
Yes.
There's not much.
There's not much. Snow cover is defined as 2 centimeters on the ground. Now, so that's all the snow that's fallen, minus what's evaporated or melted. And right now we've got about 3 centimeters in the Winnipeg area, maybe a little bit more, but some areas in the prairies have very, very little. Have a look at this. Now, this is the southern Manitoba area, just a trace on the ground to the west of us. Last time we had snow amounts this low, I think we're in 1997. We had a brown Christmas that year, so 25 years ago. You can see they are higher up around the Riding Mountain and into northern Manitoba, 10 to 15 centimeters. Around Winnipeg, 3 to 5, and this could take a bit of a hit with warmer temperatures in the next couple of days. Check this out, though. Eastern Saskatchewan and southwestern Alberta, absolutely nothing on the ground, and warm weather on the way to those regions as well. Projected snowfall, well, if you are a skier, a snowmobiler, you're not going to like this map. This is the next 48 hours or so, up to about Friday at 6 p.m., and there's just nothing on the way to the south. However, a low-pressure system moves across the north tonight, and by tomorrow morning, with rising temperatures overnight, we've got a warm front moving through and about 4 centimeters in the Churchill area, about the same in Shamattawa, a couple of centimeters for Thompson, and then going forward through the day, a few more centimeters in that northeastern section of the province. Right now, we've got some cloud cover that kind of stuck around a little longer today, a few breaks in the cloud, and we did see a few flurries west of the Red River Valley, but really they just kind of danced around Winnipeg, went up through the Interlake with a couple of snowflakes, but that was about it. It is dry out there. -4 is the current temperature, and that's pretty much where we're going to stay through the night tonight. Southeast winds are at 26. Futurecast looking at that snow moving across the north. Second impulse through the day tomorrow, but snow-wise, nothing going on here across the south on Thursday. Just a breezy day from the south and temperatures above seasonal. Been saying that for days and days, weeks and weeks now. So if you're looking for colder weather and a little more snow, it's really not in the forecast. If you're looking for mild weather and a bit of a break from the cold stuff for Christmas, well, this is a forecast for you. I mentioned breezy tomorrow. First thing in the morning, we'll see winds going from a gust of 30 to a couple of gusts up around 40 kilometers per hour early in the day, and it's right out of the south here in the Red River Valley. And then later on the day, about 28 to 30 kilometers per hour, but really calming down in western Manitoba. So tonight, a constant -4. A little windy overnight, winds south around 30 to 40. And then in the morning, we still got winds up around 30 kilometers per hour. A high tomorrow of 0 under sunny skies, but a bit breezy from the south at 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. Long range has us in the mild stuff. -1 on Friday, 2 degrees on Saturday. Outside the city where there's not much snow in the fields, could be even warmer than that on Saturday. And for Christmas Eve, a high of -1, Janet. So that thin snow cover could take a bit of a hit on Saturday.
Oh, there we go. Here we go, brown Christmas. But we'll talk more about that coming up. And maybe not, because there might be some more snow in your forecast. Thanks, John.
You bet.
At John Pritchard School in North Kildonan, a canine is becoming book best friends with some students. It's thanks to a St. John ambulance program called Therapy Animals Involved in Literacy Skills, or TAILS. Kids get a chance to sharpen their reading skills by reading to Rosie, a 9-year-old boxer. Take a look at what a difference a dog can make.
So Rosie, we're ready to go. Let's go see, and then maybe name the student. Okay, let's go. Ready?
He said it sounds like a model got a mystery to solve. Oh, Clinton said, did you talk to her?
The TAILS program is where children meet with therapy dog teams and read with a dog for 6 to 8 weeks at a time in an effort to improve their self-confidence and reading skills. So children will come in for their reading with the dog for the TAILS program, and they are super excited. They want to pet the dog, but then they have brought in their own book that they're wanting to read. And so they are essentially reading to the dog. They sit down, they pat the dog, which is very comforting for them, and they work on reading the story to the dog. So the handler is sitting there, essentially just supporting the dog, but it's an interaction between a child and a dog.
I've never been around a lot of therapy dogs, but Rosie, I feel really comfortable around her because she's calming, and I met her in grade 5. She makes reading a lot more fun.
And I'm Rosie's handler, and she's been with me, well, she was 2 months old when we got her, and she just had that personality. So I just did all the training and everything with her, went through St. John Ambulance to do our child test and our adult test, and she passed. So now she also is coming into the schools to read with my students.
Buying lunches for the kids instead of tubing.
I see with my students that read with her, they do seem more relaxed, and they know she's not going to judge them. So if they make a mistake on a word, it doesn't matter. They can just keep going, because when they read with Rosie, I don't interrupt.
And think it's really funny to sneak up on you and shove you in the belly as hard as she can. Feels pretty good. It feels like I'm, sometimes I read, she's like almost on the book, trying to, feels like she's trying to read it with me.
I love it, and they tell me, the kids always say, I love when Rosie's coming, and everybody wants to see her, and we walk in the school and everybody stops her. She just has a calming effect on everybody.
Feels pretty relaxing, pretty calm, but also you're kind of excited though at the same time.
Well, kids in general, students don't really like to be taken out of the class. So with Rosie, it's kind of, I bring her and the kids all want to see her. So then all of a sudden they're more confident because they get to go and read with her. And then I've also heard that from teachers in the classroom that say that they have been more confident reading, just more relaxed and everything after they've come back from being with her.
Tensions between India and Canada may be softening. This all has to do with the U.S. unsealing an indictment linking India to a plot in that country. We'll tell you more about it after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has responded to American claims that his country is behind efforts to kill critics of his government abroad. 3 months ago, he chastised the Canadian government for making similar claims. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he now senses a shift in India's tone. Ishan Garg has more from New Delhi.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has for the very first time addressed allegations that an Indian official was involved in an assassination attempt on a Sikh activist on US soil. In an interview with the Financial Times, Modi said that this is one issue that India is looking into, but it's not one that is going to derail India-US ties. In the interview, Modi also said that India is deeply concerned about any of the activities of its citizens and added that India-US ties are going from strength to strength. This comes at a time when President Joe Biden has already described India-US ties as one of the most consequential ties in the world right now. This comes even as India has been facing similar accusations from the Canadian government. Just a few months ago, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau alleged that Indian officials were involved in the killing of a Sikh activist in Canada, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, India has said that it has already constituted a panel to look into the allegations made by the US, while for Canada it has said that for several months Canadian officials were unable to provide the Indian government with actionable intelligence. Now, the Indian government does say that allegations like these have posed a concern because these accusations also mean that Indian government has to take another look at its national security policy as well. Now, analysts say that even despite similar allegations coming from both the countries, India has taken a very different approach in dealing with them. With the US, India has shown that it's more forthcoming with its intelligence and also in taking action. But with Canada, the relationship has taken a different turn. More than 41 Canadian diplomats had to leave India, but with America, the relationship has not soured at all. Now, analysts say that India is largely being seen as a counterbalancing power to China in the region, which is why countries like the US are also not taking a stern approach with India, even despite these allegations. Ishan Garg for CBC News, New Delhi.
The top political leader of Hamas is in Egypt for talks on a possible truce. Hamas and Israel are trying to negotiate a pause in the fighting to allow delivery of more civilian aid and the release of more hostages. Julia Wong has the latest.
Little moments of being a kid against the big backdrop of war. This camp for displaced Palestinian children aims to distract with games, shows, and entertainment. I came to play here because I wanted to be happy, this little girl says, and forget the difficulties of war.
They are not meant to be dead bodies in the streets. They are not meant to sleep in tents. They deserve to have a decent life. And we are trying to mitigate this huge trauma that they're exposed to.
Trauma like this. The aftermath of an Israeli strike in southern Gaza that sent people rushing for help and working frantically to find victims. A mosque was bombed, one man says, a mosque with residents, and there was a school nearby, and there were kids nearby. For Israelis with loved ones still being held in Gaza, hope something will change.
I don't want war. I never wanted war. I want peace and I want my daughter home.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is clear, reiterating Wednesday the war will only end once Hamas is eliminated, he says, adding those who think Israel will stop are not connected to reality. But Israel has opened the door to a possible second humanitarian pause. Wednesday, the political leader of Hamas traveled to Cairo for talks with Egyptian officials, believed to be discussing another truce that could see more hostages freed in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. Julia Wong, CBC News, London.
A vote at the UN Security Council on a possible humanitarian pause in the fighting in Gaza has been delayed again. The U.S. has reportedly asked for more time. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says talks are ongoing. He also says Israel has an obligation to eliminate the threat posed by Hamas and minimize civilian casualties. But he says the world is focused on the actions of Israel, not Hamas.
There seems to be silence on what Hamas could do, should do, must do, if we want to end the suffering of innocent men, women, and children. It would be, I think, good if the world could unite around that proposition as well.
U.S. President Joe Biden says it is self-evident that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. That comment comes in response to a ruling by the Supreme Court in Colorado. Judges there are keeping Trump's name off the ballot in the state's Republican primary vote. CBC's Richard Madden has more on the ruling and reaction to it.
The bombshell ruling by Colorado's High Court has determined former President Donald Trump violated the U.S. Constitution's so-called insurrection clause and ordered his name be removed off the state's presidential primary ballot. Now, the court, citing his role in the January 6 riots on Capitol Hill, used a little-known section from the 14th Amendment to disqualify a presidential candidate, labeling him an insurrectionist, an old law from the Civil War era meant to keep Confederate sympathizers from returning to power. This is the first ruling of its kind in U.S. history. And while it doesn't apply outside Colorado, it poses an immediate threat to Trump's candidacy.
Frankly, this case is only here because Trump's actions himself. He is the person who has led to this decision that he is disqualified because he tried to steal the presidency from the American people.
Now, the Colorado judges were all appointed by Democratic governors. They've paused their decision until January 4th, just one day before its deadline to certify candidates for the state's primary. Trump's lawyers plan to appeal this ruling all the way to the Supreme Court, possibly setting up a monumental decision from a court where Trump appointed 3 of its judges. Now, Trump needs them to restore his name on the ballot. How the court will handle this case and how fast they'll make their decision is anyone's guess. This is the latest major legal problem for Trump, who has a commanding lead in the Republican primary. And so far, he's playing the victim and trying to turn the tables, accusing Democrats of being a threat to democracy. Even his Republican rivals campaigning against him are rallying to his side.
We don't need to have judges making these decisions. We need voters to make these decisions. So I want to see this in the hands of the voters.
They're criminalizing politics, and that's what Trump is facing.
I do not believe Donald Trump should be prevented from being president of the United States by any court. I think he should be prevented from being president of the United States by the voters of this country.
Many Democrats have voiced their support for the ruling, saying there's ample evidence the former president incited an attack on their democracy and there should be consequences. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
Well, it's big business, and it's also a growing problem. Every year, thousands of companies are hit by ransomware attacks. Worldwide, it's estimated to cost $11 trillion a year. So now Canada and other countries are pushing businesses to just say no to cyber criminals. CBC's Jonathan Gatehouse takes a look at one Canadian company that did just that.
It was a hot, dry day in southern Ontario, but inside the Weather Network's headquarters, a storm was brewing. Computer systems were frozen, all data unavailable, leaving viewers and app users across the country without temperatures, maps, and forecasts. Technicians scrambled to find the problem. Then, the ransom demand arrived.
Well, September 11th is when kind of hell broke loose.
An email threatening to divulge sensitive corporate information on the dark web unless the company paid an astronomical price.
It's the first question that people ask you. I'm absolutely certain of it. Right? How much was it?
It's in the tens of millions.
The pressure was on to pay to unlock their systems. But Nana Banerjee, the CEO of the network's parent company, made a principled choice, heeding the advice of Ottawa and other governments to just say no to cybercrime.
We considered for a microsecond and just came to the conclusion that you're dealing with criminals. There was no guarantee that they're not going to share your secrets with the rest of the world. So what are you really paying for?
The list of Canadian ransomware targets keeps growing. Bookseller Indigo, grocery giant Sobeys, a group of hospitals in southwestern Ontario. Overall, the numbers are staggering. The gangs behind the attacks so industrious, hackers now strike every 39 seconds, with 560,000 pieces of malware detected each day. No one knows how much money is changing hands, but in Canada alone, it's estimated 70% of targets pay up. With many of the criminals operating beyond the reach of law enforcement in places like Russia and Iran, the big question is, how do you stop them? Dozens of nations, including Canada, recently pledged to halt all ransom payments from government coffers. A hardline approach Canada's cyber czar hopes businesses will embrace too.
Paying ransom is always a very tricky proposition. Paying ransom fuels the ransomware ecosystem that's reinvested by cyber criminals in developing capabilities.
In the Weather Network's case, it took weeks to fully restore and upgrade their systems at a considerable cost. But Banerjee says he's sure the company did the right thing.
Until the cybersecurity preparedness world comes up with better systems of protection, you have to assume this will happen again and someone will try it again.
With potential disaster lurking in every outside email attachment, organizations have learned to be cautious. But changing the mindset of hacking victims from panicked to defiant will surely be a long-term project. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Toronto.
From something that's sadly gaining in popularity, or at least the frequency that it occurs, to a tradition that's fading away, but it's still some that everyone seems to enjoy, getting a greeting card this time of year. A 12-year-old boy in Nova Scotia is particularly fond of holiday cards, getting them and giving them. He is now on a mission to send out thousands. CBC's Kayla Hounsell has his story.
Joey Connolly spends a lot of time in this exact spot.
Hours.
Why?
Because I love it.
It's as simple as that. Joey just loves making cards.
He's loved cards since he was a toddler. It's just what brings him joy.
But earlier this year, Joey wasn't experiencing any joy at all. He lives with autism and was being bullied at school. Everything changed when his parents posted on social media inviting people to send him cards for his 12th birthday. He received hundreds.
It was 8 weeks solid of mail. Every day for 8 weeks, there was mail in that mailbox from anywhere from BC to Newfoundland, sometimes Australia.
You're on the cover of that one. Yeah, it turned me into a card.
He's now known as the Card King.
And he was laughing again. It just brought back the spark, the light in his eyes.
For Christmas, he wanted to make 1,000 cards, his favorite number. Now they've made more than 3,000, sending them to schools, seniors' homes, social enterprises, and more.
We did Snoopy, we did SpongeBob. We just had a lot of fun with it. It was a really good time for Joey and I to spend time together.
And then came the offer from Carlton Cards for next year.
Joey's going to be able to design a custom card that will be printed out. All the 6,000 cards that he wants to do will all be taken care of.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Sometimes he delivers the cards himself. This is a group of adult learners.
For Joey to want to come here to participate in this with us means a lot because a lot of our learners have struggled throughout their lives.
Long after his birthday, he's still finding surprises in the mailbox. His mother says the cards give him confidence. They've also improved his reading.
I am so proud of him to come from a very dark place to a place where he's content and he's happy and he's calm and he's just my silly, goofy Joey.
As he mails off the last batch, his mother hopes Joey's story will inspire others living with autism to explore their interests, whatever they may be. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Marshalltown, Nova Scotia.
The federal government's putting a push on electric vehicles. Okay, that's great, but what's being done about the lack of charging stations? That story is coming up next. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. With Ottawa's new plan to accelerate the use of electric vehicles, there comes a new concern about the desperate lack of charging stations. On top of charging ports that EV owners might have at home, it's expected the country will need nearly 500,000 individual public charging ports to meet eventual demand. Right now, there are just 25,000. CBC's Katie Nicholson has more.
When Claude Michon needs to juice up his EV, he has to drive it to this public charging station.
Park the car, charge it, and walk home, about a 15-minute walk from here, and then walk back the next morning, pick the car up fully charged.
There's nowhere to charge it in his condo building, and the parking lot next to his place doesn't have enough power for even one charging station. Retrofitting condos and parking lots with EV chargers isn't cheap, anywhere from hundreds of dollars to thousands, if the transformers that feed the building need to be upgraded.
The cost is dramatically lower if you do it during the build as opposed to a retrofit.
At the University of Toronto, Olivier Trescas is part of a research team developing new EV charging technology. He says it's best that developers build for the future.
A good compromise is just to have the rough-in, so that is to have the power connection from the panel to the parking spot, and then when the time comes, you can actually install the charger and plug it into that receptacle.
Across the country, there's a mishmash of incentives and regulations for new builds to include varying numbers of EV charging stations, while federally, the government's trying to change the electrical code to make new residential buildings EV ready.
Some condos that are being developed right now that aren't actually putting in 100%. They're doing just, the minimum.
But at least one Toronto developer is going all in on a net zero future.
We will have 4 levels of underground parking, and every one of those spaces will have EV chargers.
It costs an extra $10 to $12 million, but she believes it's worth it.
It's a win-win for the environment. It also is, entices people that purchase a unit here to buy an EV vehicle.
A feature that really would have helped Claude Michon out.
That would be an excellent idea, yes.
And saved him all these trips back and forth. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Weather Update is brought to you by the Art and Beauty of the National Ballet of Ukraine. January 29th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. Tickets at nationalballetukraine.com.
We always worry this time of year about the weather that you might have for traveling.
Yeah.
And that looks like leading up to Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a
too
problem.
bad. Yeah,
No,
for
not
traveling.
at all. What about Christmas Day itself?
Christmas Day itself is going to be continuing with this milder weather, and I've got a little bit of a surprise. Well, we've got a fireplace here in the studio.
Oh, nice.
And what I've done is I've hung some stockings on the fireplace beside the window. And, this is what it looks like right here. And I'll just put a stop. See, there's John and Janet and Riley and Marjorie. And a little fire burning. It's nice and warm over in the corner. Just kidding. That's not really our fireplace. And this isn't our snow globe. But this is a Christmas Day forecast. The daytime high should be around -4 with a sun-cloud mix. Snow falling, that's just a wishful thinking at this point if you're hoping to get the new cross-country skis out for a spin or something like that. Temperatures around the region aren't really going to budge much tonight as we head into the overnight. Got a cooler -7 in Selkirk, a -9 in Swan River, and over in Barons River, and -10 in Red Lake. But current numbers really a lot warmer than they should be for this time of year. Looks cool across the north, but a lot of these numbers are going to be warming up overnight. It's -20 right now in Churchill and -17 in Thompson. And I'll show you what the numbers will look like as we get into the morning here in a second. Tonight's lows of -6 in Fort Frances, -8 in Kenora, and we'll see some clear breaks, but some cloud as well. There are a few flurries floating around in the southern Red River Valley, but this is an insignificant amount of snow here. -3 and -4 through Winnipeg and Emerson. And right now we're at -4. So like I say, temperature isn't going to move very much. And there are the numbers in the southwest. Now where you see the little asterisk beside the number, that's a rising temperature along with a warm front that will provide some snow. So we'll go from -20 to -13 by morning in Churchill, and a couple of centimeters at least, I think closer to 4, a couple of centimeters in Thompson. And then tomorrow we've got periods of light snow, but not much further accumulation, and a lot of that is out to the east for the day tomorrow. But look at the numbers. This looks more like April as opposed to December in northern Manitoba. And across the south, west of the Red River Valley, it will be warmer. A lot of fields will be gathering up that incoming solar radiation and making it a little bit warmer. Here in Winnipeg will be at 0, +1 in Emerson, Steinbach at 1, the rest of the southeast as well. And cloudier skies will exist over in northwestern Ontario with highs anywhere from 0 in Kenora to 2 degrees in Fort Frances.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Well, he's a man who's well known in our running community. He's organized the Polar Bear Marathon in Churchill, and now he's hit a milestone. We'll tell you about it after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. A Steinbach man recently hit a milestone. 75-year-old Albert Martins has completed 50,000 kilometers in his 50-year running career. Martins has run in marathons and ultra-marathons around the world. He's even organized the Polar Bear Marathon in Churchill. He spoke with CBC's Marjorie Dowhouse on Radio Noon.
I've logged everything and tracked everything, and I I came across the 50,000 kilometer point just recently, and it was in a park in La Broquerie, Manitoba, and I put a little sign up, and I was going to actually celebrate a little bit more in summertime, but it happens that it's in wintertime that I reach that milestone. I'm just a hobby runner, and I'd go for a run, 5, 10 kilometers after work, or 12, pretty much every day, and feel much better, and record it, write it down, and keeping a record is a good motivator because it gives you a goal. You see where you've been, and you see where you're going to go, and stuff like that. It does bring about some health, I think, some fitness and well-being, and stress reliever. There's so many factors involved. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. It builds your confidence a little bit, and yeah, it's a wonderful sport.
Steinbach's Albert Martin speaking on CBC Radio today. A boy from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia is helping his community get into the holiday spirit. The 7-year-old wanted to earn some money to buy Christmas gifts for his family. So he headed into the woods with a saw in his hand and his grandfather. CBC's Erin Potty has the story.
There's a new tree lot on the block, and the person running it, well, he's quite the salesman.
I want people to know that they're really big and they're nice and fresh.
For the past few weeks, Michael McNeil has been in the woods with a small saw, cutting down trees to be sold at his business, Mike's Fresh Cut Trees. The small lot can be found behind his grandparents' house in Westmount. Customers have the choice of trees ranging from small, tall, full, or skinny. So who's picking out the Christmas trees?
Me.
And what do you look for in a good Christmas tree?
Porcupines.
Yeah.
Big.
Kim McNeil is Michael's mom. She says her son's business has been a great learning experience and even led to Michael opening his own bank account.
Yeah, him and his Poppy go up to the woods, and he's been showing the Poppy the trees, and Poppy's been kind of giving him some supervision with the saw and letting him cut them down himself. So we have all kinds of funny pictures of Michael under trees and that, but he's learning a lot about being in the woods and about budgeting his money and earning money. So
the 7-year-old not only picks out the trees, he also comes up with the pricing. So you know what to look for in a good Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Michael says he carries trees over to his customers' vehicles. And just how does he plan to spend his money?
To get my family Christmas presents.
Billy and Clara Forrest say their grandson sold a few trees last Christmas and became hooked.
Last year he had a few trees to sell, right? So he couldn't wait for this year. I think he wanted to start selling in September. Yeah. So like I said, it doesn't surprise me when he wants to make money. It's just a natural for him.
For Michael, going out into the woods is a cold job, but one he's prepared to do. And if he ends up making some extra cash, well, he's saving up for a dirt bike, although his family says it may take a few dozen more trees before he gets there. Erin Potty, CBC News, Westmount.
That kid has great prices. Did you notice? $5 for a small tree? Wow. John's in next with your 7-day forecast, and then we have a daily lift to keep you right on track. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Over the next 7 days, not much snow, and we do get milder toward the weekend. Weekend just before Christmas. So 0 tomorrow. Lots of sunshine next few days. It'll be breezy as well. -1 on Friday, 2 degrees on Saturday, and then Christmas Eve we're at -1 and cloudy skies. And then we wake up Christmas morning to a -11, the high -4. All of that still well above seasonal. And all it takes for some people to begin creating a beautiful Christmas display in their yard is an innocent question from a small child.
So be careful what you ask.
Yeah.
It could cause a lot of work for your parents, but it's worth it. For tonight's Daily Lift, we pull the train into Winnipeg's Island Lakes neighborhood.
My name is Paul Michael Halipchuk. I live at 569 Island Shore Boulevard. It's about 3 days to put up everything now. When my first daughter was born, she asked me, "Daddy, why doesn't our house have as many decorations as the rest of the houses in the neighborhood?" Well, you see the result. My favorite reaction was when we had a little girl visit us who was ill, and she asked if she could put her stuffed animal on the train, and so we arranged that for her. And the look on her face and her parents, they were so happy. That was, I think, my favorite. Sure hope everyone comes and sees it and has a great time and a Merry Christmas.
So great. I've really enjoyed bringing all these different Christmas houses to folks at the end of the show.
Tons of fun. I'm surprised when he said it only took 3 days to set that up. It looked pretty complicated.
He must have a huge storage area somewhere, right? And put away big chunks of it all together. Yeah. Where do you store the stuff? That is a question.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can find out more wonderful places to check out by going to Facebook and Winnipeg Christmas Map.
Yeah.
Look there. We'll see you tonight at 11.
See you tonight.